Happy Families podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
On average, a lot of people can actually work through these challenges by just having a couple of safe people that they can talk with.
And now here's the stars of our show, my mum and dad.
Hello, this is Dr. Justin Coulson. I'm the author of 6 books about raising families to be happy and have a PhD in psychology. I'm the founder of happyfamilies.com.
You sound like you're putting your psychologist voice on.
.au. I'm not trying to. Am I sounding serious?
Yes, very serious today.
I'm sounding clinical. How does that make you feel?
Oh,
Mrs. Happy Families.
where's the couch?
What, to sleep on or to talk to me on? So I'm obviously a very serious person by the sounds of things. I've got a PhD in psychology and I've written some books. You're the mum to our 6 daughters and my podcast co-host and wife. I should put that in there as well. There's a bit of a problem happening around the world at the moment. Most people are fully aware of it. It's called a global pandemic. And today, in fact, all of this week, we're going to be addressing the mental health issues and talking about solutions when it comes to what the extended lockdowns are doing to our nation's children and youth and also parents. I can't wait for this week. We're having a really important conversation on Wednesday with Professor Lee Waters from the University of Melbourne, the Centre for Wellbeing Research in the Graduate School of Education. We're also going to be answering listener questions. And today we're talking about what to do when you can't get help. I want to share something with you, Kylie, that I think is really important. This came from a news article. Unfortunately, I don't actually have the resource. Somebody sent it to me and all I can do is quote what it says. But have a listen to this. There is no availability of psychologists for children under 12 in the West. Now we're talking about Western New South Wales here. There is limited mental health support. Let's not pretend we're able to mitigate the effects of lockdown by our existing absolutely overburdened mental health care system. Somebody says, as a psychologist working long hours in direct client service and hours in indirect reports and letter writing, etc., every day for the last 18 months, the task feels insurmountable. The pain and suffering of broken lives has not been seen on this scale for decades. There's a cognitive neuropsychologist and Swinburne University of Technology researcher by the name of Susan Russell. She says the demand for mental health services has grown as the pandemic has entered the second year of challenges. She said in early 2020, people were about 3 to 4 times more anxious, depressed and stressed than before the pandemic. That's now surged to about 6 to 7 times based on data from both April and August this year. And a GP in Melbourne, in Bundoora, says avenues for mental health support are at capacity. She told 9news.com.au, many child and adolescent psychologists across Victoria have closed their books and are not taking any more patients because of the huge demand on their services. There are children on wait lists for months and months and months. So what we're really doing here is we're witnessing firsthand this collective mental breakdown among children because of the state of perpetual lockdown across New South Wales, the ACT, and Victoria in particular, where it has been over the top unhealthy. And while not making a political statement, the Andrews fixation on COVID-0 is leading to decisions that don't have any empirical basis but are absolutely locking people in unhealthy ways. That's the situation we're up against, and that's what we're talking about today.
So we actually had a conversation recently with Tony Fitzgerald. He was the virtual services manager at Your Town. They take care of both Parent Line and Kids Helpline.
Yep.
And that conversation was really eye-opening. He talked about the fact that numbers going through the call centre had skyrocketed in the last 12 to 18 months.
And every day they're basically setting new records because of the distress of kids and parents. People, John Brogden, who runs Lifeline, he was on Twitter saying every other day the numbers are all new records. It's staggering how many people are struggling.
So today's podcast is about helping you when you can't actually access the help that you need.
Yeah. If you try to get into the GP so that you can get an appointment with a psychologist, it's going to be really challenging. I think that's really it. And Kylie, you were listening to a podcast. We were talking about this earlier, and you had a couple of really useful insights that I think are worth sharing.
This particular podcast was interviewed a therapist, and just the acknowledgement that on the whole, therapy is frowned upon or doesn't necessarily have a good connotation to it as a society in general. But his acknowledgement was that there are so many different forms of therapy. We often think about, sitting on the couch, as we joked about at the beginning of the podcast, and, talking to a psychologist. But the realization that for some people, that's not what they need. And his acknowledgement was that a good therapist will actually help you to tap into your own authentic self, is what he called it. Authentic self, to find your own answers. A therapist isn't going to give you the answers. A therapist is going to guide you through a process to help you get those answers.
In other words, it's about doing inner work. It's about self-discovery. It's about growth and development. It's not about sitting down on the couch and being given a prescription for this is what you need to do to be happy.
Yeah. And he acknowledged that if you have a village, which I talk about all the time, but if you have a village, if you have a good friend or a good family member who you feel that you can be completely open and vulnerable with, that more times than not, you actually don't need therapy. You just need to be able to talk through and work through challenges. Now, he also obviously acknowledged that there are some extremely challenging experiences that people go through, and they do need therapy, and there's all kinds of therapy available for them. But on average, a lot of people can actually work through these challenges by just having a couple of safe people that they can talk with.
Yeah, so we're not discouraging people from receiving professional help, because professional help is absolutely necessary in many, many cases. However, there are many cases as well where if we can get circumstances and environment, people and processes right in our lives, we can negate or dramatically reduce our need for therapeutic help. And that's, I think, where we can be most helpful in this podcast, because it's hard to get therapeutic help. And if you can't get that help with somebody who is a professional who's paid to help you to get through these hard times, what options have you got? Given that waiting lists are months and months long. I mean, I talked to somebody the other day who was trying to get into a psychology clinic for their child who has really, really big challenges, autistic, and the wait list, that they've just closed their books. They've said, we don't know when we're going to open our books again because we are that busy. They've got that much going on. It's such a big challenge. I really like what you've said, though. If we can get the environment right, if we can get our processes right in our lives, sometimes we can negate the need for therapy. So let's talk about what we could do if we're in that situation when we know we need help. Help's not available other than via the helplines, which of course we recommend that you call because they'll at least give you something. Let's talk about what you can do right after the break.
It's the Happy Families Podcast.
For a happier family, try a Happy Families membership, because a happy family doesn't just happen. Details at happyfamilies.com.au.
It's the Happy Families Podcast, the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now. And today we are endeavouring to give you some help when you can't get the help that you think or want.
Yeah, we've framed the problem. There's a lack of good professional help because psychologists are closing their books and they're just saying we can't help any more people. But there is a silent epidemic that goes along with this global COVID pandemic, and the epidemic is that we've got major problems with people getting mental health help. So if that is you, or if you know somebody who needs help but they can't get it, there's a handful of things that science tells us we can try that may at least alleviate those depression or anxiety or stressed out symptoms and make family life and personal life a little better.
So I think one of the biggest challenges that we're experiencing as a society in general with lockdown is a lack of connection.
Yeah.
And it's really easy when you're not able to do the things that you'll do on a day-to-day basis to make connections, to kind of sever connections in the process. And one of the things that I have found so helpful, I hate those video FaceTime call things. I really, really struggle with them. But because of lockdown, I've actually had to put on my big girl pants and deal with the fact that I'm staring at my own face and my friend's face at the same time. And the joy that it has brought to me and the feeling of connection that I have had surpasses any phone call that I've had with my friends. But I think sometimes even though we know it's there, we don't utilize it because we can't have that coffee that we have with them every Tuesday morning or whatever. And we recognize that we're all dealing with homeschool and all of the challenges. So I think that, tapping into some of those technology opportunities, we make decisions for other people. we assume that they're too busy because they're dealing with their stuff and you're dealing with your stuff. But I think it's really important for us to actually be very conscious in our decisions to make connections in spite of the fact that it's not where we are. I've had the opportunity through some of our isolating periods of just reaching out to some older ladies in our area who are extremely isolated and just touching base with them, checking in, making sure they're doing okay and seeing the joy on their face that somebody actually thought of them. You know, for those of us who live in families and we have other people around us, it still can be challenging, but at least we've got other human contact. But these people who live on their own really, really struggle. One of the other things that I've done too is just acknowledging that I recognise that there are a few people in my circles who are really, really struggling and I can see them spiralling down. And so I created a little gratitude group with them and just got them to send me 3 things they were grateful for each day. And as they did that, I could literally see the cogs turning as things started to change because their focus was on things, and some of them were tiny little things. You know, their child laughed, but they could see something to be grateful for, and it made such a difference.
Okay, time's getting away from us, but really this is about what do you do when you can't connect with anyone? You need that psychological help. Connection is at the heart of it. I've got a couple of other things that I think are worth just mentioning for sort of 10 or 15 seconds each. The first thing I'm going to emphasize is you've got to look after your body. Like, everybody knows this, and yet, so I can't tell you how good it feels. You know this if you do this. If you have physical activity in your life regularly, you just feel better. Full stop, end of story. I just love getting out on my bike every morning and going for that ride. It changes everything. And it's the social part as well as the exercise part.
One of the things that I absolutely loved when we went down into first lockdown last year was how busy our neighbourhood became with people walking.
Yes.
They don't do it. They don't get out. But because it was their only source of getting out and about, people were walking all day, every day. It was awesome.
Seeing people in the street was like, wow, this
and I've noticed everybody is so much more friendly. They want to say hello.
Yeah. Secondly, sleep. Like, actually get enough sleep. Stop binging on different series on whatever streaming service you use. Get enough sleep. It's so important for well-being. It's associated with not enough sleep is associated with a whole lot of medical issues. Get enough sleep.
I think in line with that is just an acknowledgement that keeping a routine, even though you're not going to work and you're not doing X, Y, and Z, it's so important for you to have that routine and structure to your day so that you're not being idle.
Yep. And the last thing that I'm going to highlight is ditch the devices. Like, I'm not anti-screen, and we've talked about this quite a lot on the podcast, but I do know that screens can, if they're not serving a purpose, if they're not doing something meaningful, if you're not using them mindfully, if you're not able to moderate, these are the 3 M's that Jocelyn Brewer talks about all the time. You should check out Digital Nutrition with Jocelyn Brewer. She says use your screens mindfully, use them moderately, and use them in ways where you can really maximize your life. If they're detracting from your life, if they're detracting from your connections, if they're detracting from your ability to exercise and live large, then ditch the device and focus on the stuff that works, because all too often it will interfere.
And if you love reading, I'm going to suggest pick up a few books.
Yeah.
Brene Brown, she has been brilliant as I've started to work through some kind of just my own little challenges. Not so much therapy, just an acknowledgement that there's room to grow and room to learn. And I think that if you're open to hearing new ideas and new suggestions, that this can be a wonderful way to kind of work through your own process.
Okay, so this isn't therapy. We do recommend it for those who need it, but we also recognize that sometimes therapy is not what you need. Sometimes you just need to move your body, be in nature, connect with others, volunteer, make a difference in the world, get enough sleep, look after yourself, read, do some inner work. These are the kinds of things that may actually help you during these extended lockdown periods. We really hope and pray that things are going to get better for you if you're in a lockdown state at the moment. And if things are a struggle, we again recommend that you call out to those lifelines, whether it's Lifeline itself or Kids Helpline or Parent Line or wherever it might be, that you can get some help. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon. He's from Bridge Media. Craig Bruce is the guy that's our executive producer, and we appreciate the work that both of those gentlemen do to help the podcast sound as good as it does and to have the impact that it has in so many lives. If it's working for you, can you jump onto Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and review? It's those ratings ratings and reviews that help other people to find out about the podcast and get help that might be useful for them and their family. And if you'd like premium help, the very best help that we've got, please have a look at our Happy Families memberships. Those memberships are available at happyfamilies.com.au.